Hello, Forever Family, and welcome to today's episode of the Product Power Hour. I'm really excited to be here with you, and we're joined by a very special guest. We're going to talk about our new DX4 system that's designed to help give you a mental reset and help realign your associations with food. Now, I'm joined by a special guest, Kat Morrill, who was instrumental in helping us design this program. As you know, DX4 was created with scientists, doctors, nutritionists, psychologists, and industry expert, and Kat Morrill is one of those people. So she knows our C9 and our DX4 systems intimately. Kat Morrill is a 30-year veteran of the fitness industry and the founder of Catalyst for Fitness. Throughout her distinguished career, Kat has served as a master trainer for Technogym. She's been the fitness and nutrition director for commercial and private studios and is a high-level consultant. Having worked with everyone from high-profile celebrities to everyday individuals, she possesses a rare depth of expertise in unlocking human potential. Today, Kat focuses her mastery on empowering midlife women at her private studio and online. Her holistic framework encompassing strength, power, mobility, and mental resilience is designed to dismantle the stumbling blocks of aging. Kat doesn't just train clients, she provides the catalyst for them to rediscover their power, vitality, and longevity. I've had the honor and privilege of working with Kat for almost decades now, and her expertise is truly one that is rare and unique. Kat, welcome to today's Product Power Hour.
Thank you. Very happy to be here, and thank you for that introduction.
No, it's been great. So we worked very closely, worked on the C9 rebrand where you contributed to recipes and workouts. And for those of you who are FBOs and have been around for quite some time, you may recognize her face as she was the person that led you through all of the F15 exercises, including some yoga, strength training, resistance. And she was the face and the designer of all of those applications when we had our Fit app. So Kat has been around for a while. She knows our Forever Living products very, very well. And I'm really excited to dive in, Kat, because here we are at the beginning, almost at the end of the first of 2026, right? We're almost at January's end. And I find that we all get very excited at the promise of a new year. We come with these goals, these resolutions, these notions that we're going to improve something. And I feel like, we start very, very big. And even in today's world where there's so much content around how to set goals, we often will set one big goal and then we end up falling short and then we end up stopping or trying to modify. We get frustrated and then we kind of abandon it. So today we're going to talk about a reset, and that's really what DX4 was intended to be. As you know, Kat, when we were working on the development of this, we wanted to create a system that was designed to create a pause in the way you were thinking about food, in your relationship with supplements, and really in your relationship with your entire body, and give you an opportunity to just sit for a moment, listen to your body, acknowledge how you feel when you're actually going through those first 2 days where you're fasting and taking the protein shake and the vitamins, and then introducing those greens on days 3 and 4. We wanted you to be mindful. Let's talk about that for a minute. Mindfulness is kind of a term that's very big right now. But when we talk about mindfulness when it comes to fitness and nutrition, tell me what you think that mindfulness looks like in a day-to-day regimen.
Yes, okay, I would be happy to answer that. I think that you've tapped into some really important things as well. New Year's resolutions, big plans, lots of information. We're inundated. And so the mindfulness piece is really a pause to make it personal. So rather than taking this grandiose, what applies to everybody, what do I need to do? I think that overwhelming piece just is a loud voice that we want to turn the volume down. And we want to just take a moment to find out, what does that mean to me? And for a lot of us in the world that we live in, we have so much information that we are constantly being bombarded with. It's hard to hear that voice. What am I lacking? So I think mindfulness in a nutrition and in a fitness perspective really means to step back, turn off all of the messages. Am I getting this right? Am I doing enough of this? Is it ever going to be enough? and just see, what am I missing? What do I not have? Or what is something in my life nutritionally that I'd like to see an improvement in? It could be something as simple as I'm bloated all the time, or it could be my energy is low, but something that's very specific to you. That might translate directly over into the fitness piece, and you may have the same question. I don't feel as strong as I'd like to. I'm not as mobile. So I think that mindfulness piece is the personalization of what you individually would benefit from.
You know, that's so important what you said, Kat. You're absolutely right. We're in a world where we're following all of these experts, right? And some of them might not be as expert, that their expertise might not be as strong as we think, but we follow them and we think, I'm going to do that workout, or I'm going to follow that meal plan. And we jump in both feet and we get down the road and we think, gosh, I can barely do half of those exercises, or I'm struggling to maintain mobility for 10 minutes, or this is a lot of prep work for food and I really typically don't eat like that. But we get really starstruck in a way with these ideals of healthy lifestyle, healthy eating, healthy nutrition, and balanced mobility. I like what you said, where we need to make it personal. I think truly we lose that sometimes. And it's interesting, when we set a goal, we lose that personal aspect of, what am I really willing to do to get what I want? Am I going to go through all of these steps, get a gym membership, go to the gym 6 days a week, work out for an hour, make sure I'm clean eating? You know, are we really going to do that? Or are we going to isolate and pick one thing that we could succeed at? And I think really that's a great opportunity to reflect at where our goals lie. But you're an expert and you're constantly seeking continued education. I feel like every time we talk, you're either at some conference or some aging well or some lifestyle conference. And so you're really immersed in the field of the newest information. So, when I start and I'm looking at my nutrition, I really don't know where a good place to start. So let's take it there. Let's start at the beginning. With all of these mixed messages, what is one thing that I can do to kind of jumpstart a more healthy eating habit, let's say?
Great question. So I would say I have to just go back for just 1 second on something you said about being inundated with experts and what's their expertise. I have to tap back into that, because the thing that we all need to remember is that there is no greater expert on our body than ourselves. So when we honor that and we say, okay, that may be a great diet for this person, for that athlete, whatever, it isn't personal yet. So that's the first step of looking at yourself and saying, I'm the expert in my body. I want to make sure that I'm honoring that. In a nutritional standpoint, I always tell every single person that wants to make improvements to take a food diary. This does not have to be shared. Some people feel very shamed about how they're eating, what they're not eating. You don't have to share it with anybody. You need to write down when you're eating, what you're eating. Just take an account of that for 2 to 3 days. I promise I have not found anybody yet that can't look at that list and identify something on there without any expert other than yourself that they can recognize and say, I'm missing something. Oh my gosh, I didn't drink water for 24 hours. Or I'm not eating. I'm finding myself eating, I don't know, maybe some Sour Patch Kids for lunch. And I'm missing all of these meals. And then at the end, I find myself ravenous and eating a big meal before I go to bed. There isn't a strategy that has to apply to everybody. Not everybody's going to eat exactly the same. But what we do need, as you said as well, is to look at ourselves and say, if it's not realistic for me to meal prep and make 18 meals in advance, that's not who I am. That's okay. So start where you are, identify one thing in that food diary that you can say, gosh, that's something I could look at and improve. I don't have any color in my diet. Let me add a vegetable, something like that.
I love that, keeping a food diary. I know that sometimes if I write down, I get a little embarrassed because I'm like, wow, that's a lot of, I don't know, soft drink or energy or sugar. For me, I'll tattle on myself, sugar. And so you're right, you can actually identify by yourself where your weaknesses are and then start slowly to kind of add them back. I think when we look at DX4, people say, but 4 days is such a short period of time. And my response to that is, that's really all you need to plug back back in and connect with yourself. You're eliminating all of the distractions. You're taking 4 days to yourself. We all deserve that, right? We all deserve that moment of pause to really assess where we are, what our body needs, what's working and what isn't. And this isn't the time to go big. This isn't the time to like set all of these huge goals. You know, I want to eat better. Well, that's a really big goal. You need to break it down, or I want to exercise more. And I know we're going to talk about some of those ways that we can get started, and I'm really excited to jump into that. But when we look at the DX4 program, the first 2 days we're eliminating, kind of going into what we would consider intermittent fasting. We're eliminating really all of those heavy foods, and we're actually just implementing some supplements. So let's start there. Let's focus on nutrition and supplements. I'll ask you a question. Can supplements make up for a lack of nutrition?
They can't make up for a lack of nutrition. The nutrition has to be the foundation, but just as the word implies, it's a supplement. It's an addition to, it's something that can help support a lack of.
I love that. You know, it's true. We live in this world where everybody, you know, you've got all of these buzzwords, all of the trends, right? Protein, and we have collagen, and now we're into the whole world of creatine and, you know, support for different phases of life. And it's very interesting to see these things turn. Fiber is kind of the big buzzword right now. But really, when you look at that foundational nutrition, we're looking at a balanced diet and getting your nutrition first from food. Then we add supplements on those moments or through those days when we really know that either our food supply is not as robust as we think it should be, or we have those inadequacies, right? So we talk about those misses or those little gaps in our diet where supplements are really important. I want to share with our FBOs that, you know, a supplement can't solve everything for you. You know, I think sometimes we look at 1 or 2 forever supplements and think, this is it. This is going to change everybody. It's going to make everybody well. And to Kat's point earlier, everything about nutrition and supplementation is individual, and individual results will vary. So start slowly, look at those gaps, and add in the supplements that meet your everyday needs, understanding that those needs will change with age, climate, environment, lifestyle habits. So supplementation is important, but to Kat's point, you always want to get your nutrition from food. I love, Kat, when you post often, you'll post kind of some of the things that you prepare, and your salads and all of the food always looks like such a great variety. How do you come up with those ideas to create the salad from day to day to day that is rich and abundant in so many different foods? Where do you get your inspiration?
Oh, you're going to wrap me out on this one. So I am not a meal planner, meal prep person, straight up. Some people love it. I do not love it. I do love color in clothing, in food, in friendships, in life. So when I shop in the grocery store, I really try to get a variety of, let's start with fruits and vegetables. And it's not intentional that I've got to get a purple food and a red food and an orange, but it just happens that way. And so for me, if my refrigerator is always full of, I would say, I probably always have at least 10 different fruits and vegetables in there. And I will take those and I will just chop them up and make them into whatever I've got available. I always have a protein. I always have a very high quality olive oil and usually a balsamic vinegar, something very, very simple. I don't like to complicate things. Some nuts, some seeds. And I just put this melange together of whatever I have on hand. And if it turns out great, I take a picture of it because then I got to remember, oh yeah, I should try to do that again tomorrow. So it's not, some people are recipe people. Some people really love to create. I may be inspired by a restaurant that I go to that I have a salad that's amazing and I may take some components from that. But I think sometimes we overcomplicate. I don't want to waste food. I want to take advantage of the sweet potatoes that I made last night. I'm going to put them in my salad. Somebody might go, that's kind of weird. I'm like, yeah, maybe it's weird. Maybe it's not. I'll find out if I like it. I'll throw some chicken in, some pumpkin seeds. And I think just taking advantage of that as is, and you know yourself, if they're foods that you enjoy, combine them together and see what you can create.
I like that. You're so real. Thank you for sharing. I think sometimes we think as an expert, we do everything perfectly, right? And I love that you're real. But you did mention an element of preparation that, you first have to have the right kinds of foods. So when you're shopping, you need to be more mindful of that variety. So you make sure that it's in your refrigerator when you're going to pull out a snack, or that your vegetables are cut up and prepared so that you don't reach for something quick and easy, but that you reach for something that's really robust and healthy. So I like that you shared that with us. It's really nice to meet someone who's very real, but also very intense and intent in the way that they manage their lifestyle and their workouts. So we're going to switch focus a little bit. When we're talking about our DX4 program and that mindset reset, all of the supplements that we're taking are really helping to address a movement inside the body to help the body let go of some of the things that might have been holding on to and resisting, kind of to be present and mindful if we hit those cravings, to understand what's driving them. Is it true hunger, or is it that we're bored or that we're bothered by something? It's really designed to help you associate differently with how you're feeling and what you're reaching for in those moments, because I think sometimes that's a very subconscious act, right? We're feeling something, we reach for an energy drink or some sort of a snack or a treat, and we start eating it. And next thing we know, we've either eaten the whole bag unintentionally or we've drank the whole can, and it's not necessarily good for us. So we're going to talk really about that DX4 strategy, which addresses really a holistic approach to allowing the body to rid itself of those bad habits that we've had previously. And when we talk about the body, we were going to focus really on the gut, the microbiome. And you know that everywhere in the world, everybody's talking about the gut microbiome, and they're talking about its importance. The gut is the second brain of the body. And we know all of this. But at Forever, we have great products, including the DX4 program, that address specifically your gut microbiome. But let's talk about the gut, because I know that you're very familiar with the gut microbiome. Let's talk about the role the gut plays in overall health and wellness.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we think about the gut as just being where we digest, right? So we're thinking if we can heal the gut, that means that we're going to be able to digest food better. And it sounds very basic. But what we don't maybe realize is how important it is to have the gut functioning optimally. And what we mean by that is, even if we're talking about all this great food that you're ingesting, if your body isn't absorbing those nutrients, because let's say your gut isn't functioning as well, maybe you've got a leaky gut barrier, so those nutrients are not actually doing the benefit that we think they're going to do. We want to address that. We want to have a healthy, thriving bacteria environment inside of our gut. I like to think about it a lot. I started gardening maybe 5 years ago intently, and trying to grow my own vegetables. And I'll just use this as an example that maybe will make sense. And the first year I planted everything, most things did pretty well. If an area did really well, I took note of it and thought, I'm going to plant exactly the same thing next year. Planted the same things next year, did okay. Third year, not good. Fourth year, bad. So in my naivete in gardening, I didn't realize that you want to move your garden to different areas. You don't plant the same crops in the same place. Our gut is similar. We want to have a clean slate. We can't completely change that out and flush everything out the way that we might like to. But the idea behind like a DX4 or a pause in that moment to take a reset is that we have an opportunity to maybe get rid of some things that aren't working as well, to have a pause that is both intentional and symbolic, but also physically a pause in everything that we're loading the body with, and let it catch up. Let it do its job, help clear out the clutter so things are functioning optimally.
You have to kind of prepare the way, right? So we think sometimes in isolation, we think, oh, that fitness is just about mobility, strengthening the body, and wellness is about supplements, or wellness is about healthy eating. We don't think of that head to toe approach of how to incorporate everything into that, right? So we might be isolated, focused on the gut, and that might not be the best approach. It's kind of a head to toe, really holistic wellness that I like what you say, keeping it simple. We're not trying to clog, so to speak. We're not trying to bring in more information. We're trying to rid all of that noise and all of those excessive content that is kind of in our face all the time, and just stop and listen. So that gut is really important, because again, to what you said, it's not just about digestion. It's really a track of wellness. Like, that is an area that is so vitally important, that what we eat automatically affects it, not just in the form of digestion, but the way our bodies break down the foods into enzymes and how it goes into simple fats, carbs, proteins, etc. So our body is really, really smart. We just overladen it sometimes with things where it has to do a lot of extra work and then spend time catching up. And we do have a great product, our Forever Aloe Vera Gel. So just speaking personally, understanding this formula, it's literally as if you're drinking directly from the plant, and it helps really, it's synergistic, not just in the digestive aspect, but helping your body kind of clear the way, helping your body really attract and see nutrients in a different way, helping support the growth of that good bacteria in your gut, which, it's always an ecosystem. There's good and bad, and they're always kind of combating each other, but you always want to have a more good bacteria than bad bacteria. So there are ways really that you can help balance that gut. But let's talk about one of the ways that's really, really big right now, and that's just straight up fasting. So we have people that are going on either water cleanses, or they're just fasting for days and days and days on end. Can you comment a little bit on this trend, and then also maybe discuss if fasting is really good for certain people, what criteria, what that candidate might look like that could benefit from fasting?
I would say that this is my opinion. Fasting, the long, drawn out fasts, they're not something that would ever resonate with me personally. I do think that if you're talking about fasting in general, in the context of how I like to look at it, is to having timed windows of eating. That's really resonates with me, because I think it's much easier for the majority of the population to adopt. Why would you do that? Why would that be beneficial? Well, just as we're talking about that pause and that reset, our body also benefits from a time of not being fed. It allows all of its processes to catch up, and a process called autophagy, where our body is actually able to locate what we call zombie cells, which sounds really like sci-fi and awful. But we can find them, recycle them, we can get rid of them. It's kind of like taking out the garbage. And the more we're able to have that clean slate inside of our body, the more we're going to optimize our function. So I have found in my own life that it's tremendously beneficial. This is going to sound maybe crazy, but maybe I've joined the old timers club. I don't know. But I like the early bird special. I like to be done eating at 5 p.m. And then I don't eat again until I get up the next day around 6 o'clock in the morning. So I have at least a 12-hour window without food. For me, it's not hard. It's not anything I have to think about, but I find that my body, my sleep is better. All of those systems in my body, my heart rate variability, which is another really popular metric, that number rises for me. I track all this data because I'm a weirdo. I love having all the confirmation that what I'm doing is working. But that is one of the things I would say is a small window fast time, even if it's, like I said, it's a 12-12, has tremendous benefits, I would say, for the population at large. Barring somebody that has been given from their medical provider, this isn't optimal. Women have to be a little bit more careful, especially midlife. Prolonged fasting is not seen to be beneficial for them. And we want to keep that blood sugar balanced. So that would be my answer for that. Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. And that, again, kind of coming back a little bit to DX4, that pause and reset. You'll go through DX4, and some of you on days 1 and 2, you might feel hungry. And it's because you are not eating food. You're taking supplements, but your mind is going to think about all the things that you're missing. And you have to realize that's the noise we're trying to quiet. Because during that time, you're okay. We're providing all of the supplements. We've got your plant protein that's giving you a nice dose of protein. Your aloe vera gel is helping your body retain some of those nutrients that you're bringing in. You've got your multi-phys vitamin that's a daily vitamin. You've got the Duo Pure that's helping your body as it begins to process all of that, all of those bad habits and start to let go. And we have our lemon blast, which is a very interesting drink. It's kind of either a love-hate thing, I've noticed. You either really like the flavor or you don't. And that is both a fiber and a magnesium supplement designed to help you sleep better, believe it or not. Because when you're fasting and when you're doing all of this preparatory work to introduce your salads and those nutrients on days 3 and 4, sometimes you get a little achy or sometimes you just don't feel your best. But I have found during the DX4 program that I'm not as hungry as I thought I would be. When I'm able to eliminate the food noise, I'm not as hungry as I thought I would be. So the fasting timeline where you're just avoiding food and consuming more water and you're taking in more of those supplements, it's really just that. It's that pause and that break to help your body and your mind reset. So I think it's invaluable, which is why we continue to prescribe and do programs like this that have those first 2 days of limited consumption. Let's just use it at that, because it's not truly a fast, right? You're still drinking and you're still taking supplements, so it's not truly fasting by the true meaning of the word, but it is really that pause in your day to day that allows you to kind of to reset. So, Kat, when we talk about diet and nutrition, we get to those days 3 and 4 when we start to introduce a big salad. They can eat however many of the greens they want, as big as they want. As I was developing this program, I think I shared my salad with you. It was a huge bowl, and I literally ate every tiny morsel. I felt like I was starving, but then it began to satiate me in a very different way, which was such a delight for me to resonate and to see the energy that I got from the salad, having restricted the confusion and the noise in the first 2 days and then introducing the salad, to see really the energy that came from those leafy greens and all of those rich vegetables. But when we look at diets in general, there's so much information about macros and proteins and carbs and fats and what the right ratio is. And we've seen in the US recently, they've just completely turned the food pyramid upside down. And what we're learning is so rapid and we're finding so many new things. The diet combos are really everywhere, and the conversation about what to eat is often confusing. Can you tell me, maybe just give me a couple of tips of things to watch, or maybe identify what is just purely noise? I'll let you answer it the best way you think.
Yeah, it's a big question, and I think an important topic to have a conversation about. The thing you have to realize first and foremost with the diet industry is it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So trends and things that you can create, the diet, we're a culture that really enjoys to have that information. This is the fix. This is what'll do it. This will solve it. And the truth of the matter is that we have solved it, but we just don't like to look at the answers, because the answers are, we got to go back to the basics. We need all 3 of those macronutrients. So I like to say any diet that has eliminated protein or carbs or fats or vilified them in a way that we're like, oh, yes, it's the fat that's made us fat. It's the carbs that have made us fat. Those are things that we want to pause. Now, barring a conversation with your medical provider where there is a reason why you have to maybe modify the amount of one of those macronutrients, that's important. That's definitely something that you want to look at. But if you're to look at the overall diet, the things that I say to people, if you want longevity, if you want a body that is able to stay independent with a very high functioning metabolic factor, you've got to have muscle. And in order to have muscle, you have to have protein. So I think everybody needs to make sure that they are conscientious of how much protein they're getting in their diet. Now, the numbers, yes, we can discuss what that says. That number ebbs and flows. I can tell you where my bias is. I like to tell people to look at what their ideal body weight is and to match that in grams of protein. Now, some people might go, oh my gosh, that's insane. I could never, ever eat that. But start where you are. That's where that food diary is so important. So you know where you're coming in and you can assess, gosh, do I have a lot of strength in my body? Am I lacking something? Then I might want to look at that. Apart from that, I would definitely look to fiber. I know it's trendy, but fiber is something that if we don't get enough of, and here in the US, women were asked to get about 25 grams and men about 36, 37, something like that is what I recall. If you track that, you will probably find you're not getting that. I'm guilty of it. I have a very hard time getting that number. So you want to be mindful of that, looking at things in your diet that you might be able to increase your greens, your vegetables, your nuts, your seeds, things that might help with that. Aside from that, color. Let's look at all of the fruits and vegetables and make sure there's a wide variety of those. And then back to super basic water. Are you hydrated? Are you drinking water? Are you getting what I would say another metric I like to use is kind of trying to get close to your body weight in ounces. And that once again might be overwhelming. That is my standard. I'm not saying that that is going to apply to everybody, but kind of some people like to have a mark out there. I would say look at those things as maybe some basic foundational pieces.
I like that. So you can actually keep it simple again, right? Instead of all of the noise about what to look at, there really are some very easy guidelines just to create balance in your nutrition. I like your use of color because, fruits and vegetables vary around the world, and we're one big global forever family. We're in over 140 countries. So what's available here in the United States may not be available in Japan or Southeast Asia, equally in Africa. So I like when you talk about color because that's an easily identifiable way to pick your fruits and vegetables to make sure that you have a lot of variety. I think I joke oftentimes on stage and I'll say, everybody's on the kale kick, and never once have I heard somebody say, oh, I can't wait till I get my kale or eat my kale. And they think that that's the superfood. And if they eat enough kale, everything else is great. But yeah, kale is fantastic. However, you need to incorporate other key nutrients that you're only going to get from a variety. And I like the identifiable way to do that through color. So that's a great tip. I hope our FBOs are taking notes. All right, let's switch focus now. So we've talked a little bit about guidelines for general wellness, general nutrition, and now we're going to talk about fitness. And I know that you were instrumental in creating those videos for the Fit app. You've been instrumental in helping kind of guide us through those mobility and movement. In fact, it was your idea that helped us when we rebranded C9 recently to think about mobility in a different way, that it's really not about, setting your 10-minute goal or setting your 20-minute goal and getting after it and getting sweaty and considering it a workout, but mobility is truly movement. It's how you move and be aware that you are moving more. In fact, I invited our FBOs this year to just simply move more, to find ways to move your body more. And you and I, as we were preparing for this, you gave some really powerful tips of ways that you could actually move the body and incorporate those small daily movements. I'm excited to talk about that. So let's say I'm looking to stabilize and really mobilize my overall health and vitality. So as we age, we hear we got to move. What does that look like? How do I start? Where am I going to start moving my body? What am I going to do?
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing. And I think that making it simple, that's going to be my theme. That's going to be my tagline, keep it simple, stupid, because there are things that we can easily become overwhelmed. I'm going to say strength is number one. However, movement, if we are not able to unlock our mobility, if everything hurts, I think sometimes the tendency is just to kind of recoil and go, okay, well, everything hurts, so I'm not going to do anything. We have to move through some of that. There may be some discomfort. A lot of it resides between our ears. There's discomfort in change. There's discomfort in disrupting what maybe it hasn't served us well, but we've become complacent that, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. So one of the things I like to throw out to people is to say, let's start with a squat. Okay. Why? Because for most of us that have able bodies, we have to squat every single day. Whether or not you go, oh, I got bad knees, I got a back, I can't squat. Well, if you got in a car, if you got out of bed, if you sat down at the dinner table, newsflash, you squatted. If you went to the bathroom, you've squatted, right?
Yeah.
So it may not have been pretty. It may not be comfortable. People may have an ick feeling about it. However, the more that you do it, the better it's going to get. I actually just read some research this morning that discussed 4 different things. A sedentary 8.5 hours of sitting. So this is from a sedentary lifestyle or something a job, right? Where you're stuck in a seated position for 8.5 hours. So you had 4 different things: sitting for 8.5 hours, walking for 30 minutes, one walk for 30 minutes, or you had a 45-minute disruption of walking for 3 minutes throughout that 8.5 hours, or you had every 45 minutes, you would do 10 body squats. Of those exercises, what do you think had the greatest decrease in a blood sugar spike?
I don't know, a prolonged walk, the prolonged 45-minute just answer. That's what would be probably the common, but I'm sure it's not right. But the 45-minute walk.
I would have said the same thing. I would have said the longer walk, right? You're able to reset longer, more caloric burn. It was actually the body weight squats that happened every 45 minutes, and it takes about 30 seconds.
Wow.
So the reason why is you have more muscle activation that's happening in something like that. So here's the beauty of that. You take something like that. Do you have to do it every 45 minutes? No, this was just that research. But take that morsel and say, I don't need equipment. I don't need a big time frame and say, oh, I've got to dedicate time to travel to the gym or time to whatever. And just say, my goal for myself today is that every hour on the hour, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do 10 squats. Body weight squats. And if it's ugly and you're like, I don't know if I can do that yet, then you hold on to a wall. Then you practice in a chair. But just that act of having to mobilize, having to think, and I can give you some keys that you want to think about in perfecting that form. But just that simple act of sitting to standing helps to disrupt any blood sugar, not any blood sugar spikes, but lessen the blood sugar spikes that can happen, which means less cravings, better control, better weight management, better circulation, and a better association with your physical body.
I like that. So Kat, let's dive in, right? Because you are the expert in form. And when we were talking about this, you talked about, just sitting in a chair, how often we sit down, stand up, and whether it's assisted or not, that is a squat. And I asked you, I'm like, okay, that's really curious. So what does a squat look like for me? Like, how am I going to practice a squat so that I can actually sit down unassisted? So would you mind kind of showing us the right form? And I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to show us what an actual squat looks like.
All right, so let's just break down the basics of a squat. The first thing is we want to look at our feet. Feet, they need to be about shoulder width apart. So something that's comfortable. A wider stance is going to give you more balance. So if you know you've got a knee or a back situation, you're probably naturally going to be a little bit wider that way. So once you have that base of support, you want to think about leading with your hips. So here I'm not using a chair, but I'm imagining that there's a chair behind me. So I'm going to let my hips sit back into that imaginary chair. Now, what we commonly see is kind of a disconnection from the core where the torso will drop and we'll kind of slump into a beanbag, let's say. That's how you'd sit into a beanbag, collapse. We want to keep the body tall, sitting into a tall ladder back chair. So I want you to imagine that you have a number on your shirt, like you're a very important athlete, and you want people to see your number. So that number needs to show as you're sitting back into that chair. So sitting back does not have to be 90 degrees. If you need to, you can absolutely use something for support, but we want to lead with the hips, keep our eyes on the horizon so that nice cervical spine stays long. Sit back, push the feet through the floor to help stand back up so we start to learn to engage the core.
That's it? That's a squat.
That's it. Come on.
Wow, my goodness. Now, listen, friends, if you can't do that every hour, I'm not even asking you to do 10 or 30. If you can't do that 5 times once an hour, then I don't know how we could break it down any more simple. That seems very, very simple. I like the definition of making sure that athletic number, right? Number 1, let's say, is showing for everybody and that you're doing them nice and easy. And if you need to use support, you can. But our goal ultimately is to do it without support as we strengthen our legs, our glutes, etc. So thank you for that. It was much easier than what I thought. When I think of a squat, I think we're going all the way down to the ground and then trying to come all the way back up. And whew, that's a lot of work. So that's a great idea, Kathleen, because when you think about it, sitting and standing is something we do every single day, multiple times a day. So that's a foundational, for lack of a better term, way to really get your body in a position where your mobility is increased and your strength, because you're engaging muscles and it's allowing you to do it in a more efficient way. Something we don't really think about. So be mindful, friends that are watching, be mindful when you're sitting and standing and take just a little bit of extra effort to engage your core. And when you stand up from your chair, do it as if you're doing a squat, that you're coming back up from a seated squat. So I like that. It's something that we can all apply Most of us can apply anyway. And to your point, Kathleen, about discomfort or training our minds to realize that a little bit of discomfort is good. I know that I struggle with that sometimes, right? I want to avoid pain, and anything that has discomfort equals pain in my mind. But there are some things that you need to push through. Now, we're not asking you, if you have an injury of any kind, please consult your doctor before starting any sort of an exercise regimen. But this is something really easy that you can start right now. In fact, I hope many of you are listening to this and now you're standing up and sitting down practicing those squats, because you're going to engage with us to become more well this year, and you're going to start moving your body just a little bit more. And Kat has given you the ideal and perfect way to incorporate just one simple exercise into your daily routine. Now, I know, Kat, that you have a lot more to share by way of exercises and mobility, and we're going to leverage you. Our FBOs will be pleased to know that Kat will be consulting with us going forward, and she'll be providing some of these tips and techniques to help make your lifestyle a more improved lifestyle. Simply, when you feel well, you act well. I mean, it's a natural thing. So right now, Kat, everybody's talking about meditating. It's all the rage. It's been all the rage for about, I want to say we're on year 7 now of this becoming an explosive trend. It's not going away. We have apps now that have all sorts of people coaching us through meditation. We have all sorts of resources that are available to us for free for meditation, and we've actually included some meditation practices in the DX4 program. But let's talk about you individually. I'm curious, what meditation works for you? How do you meditate?
It's a great question. And once again, I will be very honest with you. I am one that was very averse to meditating to start with. I think my mentality was more, who has time for this? There's so many other things I could be accomplishing. And it's great until it isn't great. So one of the things that we have to look at is one of the biggest amplifiers for disease, for injury, for any maladaptive behaviors is stress. And if we don't learn how to manage stress, because we can't control stress, we can't say, oh, I'm not going to have a stressful life. We all have stress. It's inherent, and it's important too. It's something that it isn't something that we need to necessarily say is a bad thing. But what meditating does is it allows us to down regulate. It allows us to not be in a chronic stress, even if it's low grade stress, just never being able to kind of turn off the signaling. So that I say because that needed to be the piece that I honored to say, my goodness, like I do need to figure out how to meditate because I need that reset. I need to turn the volume down or off and allow my parasympathetic nervous system, my rest and digest part to really turn back up. So all that preface to lead up to the beginning for me was listening to a 5-minute meditation. Free or not, it didn't matter. It was how I would start my day before I got on my phone, before I started with clients, before I got on emails. I would turn on that meditation. Did I listen to that full 5 minutes? Probably not. Probably distracted, in, out. So would I say that was a bad meditation practice? No. We need to stop harshly judging ourselves and whether or not we're doing it right. It is the act and the practice. The practice is the word, not the perfection, the practice. I am honoring myself and giving myself, starting out with a very short amount of time to listen to a guided meditation. From there, I could tell you where I am today. It is a ritual for me that happens every single morning without fail. I have mala beads that I use. I have red light. I have a hot coffee in my hand. I have a whole ritual, and I'm there for 15 minutes, no matter where I am. It doesn't matter if I'm traveling, it happens for me. So it's evolved to that. But the starting point of meditation, very simple. Take advantage of these free opportunities to have somebody guide you, and don't worry about it. Don't worry if your thoughts travel. Don't worry if, gosh, well, I was going through my list and I was told I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to blank out my mind. Leave it. There is benefit in just practicing stillness, and coming in and out of that is part of the practice.
So where your effort began, it became a practice, an action. So you didn't give up. You maybe didn't do it perfectly from the beginning, but as you got into that practice, you set the time aside. It became, I like that word ritual for you, and it's a ritual of probably where you're able to decompress, where you're able to get some of your creative ideas, because when you downregulate the body, it's amazing all of the new things that your body turns on when you're downregulating to support you, where your mind can actually be more clear. So I like that you can start slow and you don't have to be perfect all the time. Now, let's talk about perfection and consistency, because we often think that they're the same, right? Consistency equals perfection. I didn't do it perfectly. They're not, are they, Kat? We don't take consistency and call that perfection in any stretch of the imagination. But you had talked about consistency. Let's talk about that a little more. How valuable is that in these practices?
Yeah, so consistency beats intensity. And that like, think about that for a second, because that's like heavy, because you're like, but wait, I'm supposed to do all the things and I'm lifting all the heavy stuff and I'm running all the races and doing those things. But consistency, that is what will build everything. So something that you do really well for a week and then you're like, man, that was really hard. And then you say, see you later for 2 months. That will not have nearly the value of that 10-minute walk that you did every day or 5 days a week or whatever your goal is. So consistency is a slower process. And in this world, it's a hard sell. Everybody wants a fast fix. But you have to understand with the body, especially with chronic issues, especially with things that we're trying to prevent an onset of something that we have control over, it's going to be that consistency of returning to that the body starts to go, oh, you're for real about this. Like this is something that we're 100% dialed into and we're making a change. So that consistency piece is the top of the list.
You alluded to it in what you just said, that there's no cheat code for you to improve your wellness. There's no magic pill, there's no magic food, there's no magic workout really to improve your wellness. So how can you make sure that your wellness avenues are integrated versus having siloed information? How can we integrate everything we've talked about today and create just momentum or just something to move and do tomorrow?
Yeah, so I would say favorably, we are getting to a place where these things are integrated, where we're speaking about mental health, we're speaking about physical health, we're speaking about nutrition, we're speaking about emotional health. And the conversation is inclusive of all of these different, perhaps siloed areas before. And I think I would circle back to the very beginning of where we started, that you need to look at yourself as an individual and taking that assessment. That's why that pause, that's why that DX4 moment of clarity, take advantage of that time, because you'll see yourself in a very different lens. You kind of remove a little bit of the chaos and there's a lot of clarity that you can pick out some of those moments and say, regardless of what trends, what do I feel right now? What would benefit me in this moment? And it could be something as simple as, man, I just don't sleep well. I wake up and I still feel really, really tired. And it might be analyzing that. And what happens is that when you take something small and actionable, you'll notice that those wellness buckets aren't just in sleep. It directly affects your physical activity. It directly affects your mental function. It directly affects your relationships. That piece right there, if I was to prioritize anything, I would say, look at your sleep. I don't need to get in your life and tell you that, but I would say by and large as a population, we're not well rested. And if you can look at something like that, you will find that it taps into those wellness buckets that you don't need somebody to connect for you. You can connect. You just need to be present to make the observation.
Exactly. You wrapped it up full stop right there. You are an individual. Individual results will vary, but you are completely in control of those results. So it's up to you to understand what one aspect you're going to look at. You're not going to look at everything. You're not going to look at fixing your entire life, right? We all have moments where we're like, oh, I got to fix this and that and the other, and oh, I've got to do this and that. No, you're going to quiet the noise. You're going to look at one thing, one small thing. And to your point, that one thing, because we know ourselves so well and we are the experts of our individuality, that one thing we pick is most likely going to have that holistic and that unifying result to where your whole body, your mind, everything's going to engage. Kat, it's been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing such a wealth of information. We're going to continue to engage with Kat because she is one of those industry experts that we look to as we're creating our products and our systems. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure our FBOs are going to have a lot of questions, so be prepared to watch your email, Kat, because I'm sure we're going to be reaching out to have a lot of answers for some of these powerful topics that we discussed today. So back to you. Thank you so much for all of our global family, our FBOs. And if you're new to the Forever family, welcome. We're glad to have you here. So as always, I am sending you the biggest hugs and love and wishing you the greatest success.